Greetings, my name is Greg Mahalik and I'm your professor for Writing 101, your Introduction to Writing course here at UMUC. This recording I'm doing right now because of our snow cancellation. That is something that I sent an email out earlier in the day, and also it's posted under the announcements of the course. If you want to be updated if there is a class cancellation or possibly a delay, it is something posted on the website that I have linked, but also you can sign up for my alerts and it will contact you immediately for a cancellation, just so you can be aware so you can manage your schedules accordingly. But in terms of our class, because we're a hybrid class, one thing is nice is that we are still able to fulfill the requirements of the course and go over the appropriate material over these 8 weeks, even if we have a class cancellation. So just to make sure that everyone is aware, there still is an expectation to complete the work that is for this week, and that's why I would like to touch base with everyone briefly here and go over some of the things I was going to discuss with you in person. So reviewing the outcomes of the course here in week 1, what I'm going to do is just go over some of the basic things, not all the activities we're going to do when we are in person. I intend to make class something that is engaging, where you get an opportunity to work with your classmates and work through the material. And then our in-class time, utilize that with built-in time and activities so you can complete some of the assignments in terms of your discussion boards and the article readings. I want to make it so that the class that we spend together in person is useful for you so you actually complete many assignments and know what you need to do for the rest of the week to be successful. So the outcomes for this first week of class is to initially review the syllabus. It's so critical to understand exactly what the assignments are, the expectations, and what needs to be done for a class, and also set your goals for the course, what it means to you, and also when assignments are due so you can plan accordingly. It's critically important. In terms of focusing on grammar this week, we're going to discuss writing without fragments and avoiding run-on sentences. Then we're going to discuss our writing focus for this week, the personal narrative. You're going to write a draft of a personal narrative this week to submit at the end of the week, and then give you some options to brainstorm and plan your personal narrative, for example, including things like a thesis statement that really ties together your paper. So what I'm about to do now is go over the syllabus. This is something that I encourage you to save a copy. You don't need to print it off, but have a version of this available electronically at least, so you can either follow along with me or just reference throughout the course. But I'm going to go over some of the key things and some of my insight on them for you to be successful. So first of all, for our course, we will meet in person each week, and the location I have posted on the actual online course if you want that specific address. But we'll be meeting in that specific classroom each week at the Quantico off-base site from, it says 5:50 to 9 o'clock, but just to make it a little bit easier, we're not going to meet until 6 o'clock each week. I'll be in there beforehand if you want to show up early, but actual class will not begin until 6 o'clock. It's just a bit easier to manage. And then each week we're going to wrap up class by 8:30. I will still be available afterward if you have questions or you want to for me to review some of your work or give you some additional feedback. But the actual in-class time will end at 8:30. Also, I recognize there could be emergencies or things that come up that prevent you from being there the full time. Maybe you have a childcare situation or something in terms of another job, another responsibility. And I completely recognize that, and you will not be penalized if you come late to class or if you have to miss a class, but please contact me in advance just so I can support you to be successful. My number one goal is for you to have the highest level of achievement in this course and that you gain those key skills that can be useful for you throughout your UMUC collegiate career. So please contact me ahead of time and I can support you, but also since it's a hybrid course, you can still complete those assignments at home if you're unable to be in class that day. In terms of contact information, my email is posted there. That's the best way to communicate with me. I will always get back to you within 12 hours, but typically much quicker than that. I check my email frequently throughout the day. If you have additional questions and things, feel free to send an email, or I also have posted my cell phone number, so if you want to contact me through that, if it's something very quick, my number is 703-297-6560. I always have my cell phone with me, and I'll be able to get back to you if you have any questions. In general, the summary of what this course is, the goal of this is for effective writing, being able to have collegiate level writing that can carry with you in terms of all the courses that you may take across different content areas. Regardless of what you may be studying, writing is something that's truly incorporated into everything that we do. So the goal is for you to be able to be an effective writer in terms of the essay level, but also the paragraph and sentence level, identifying how to properly structure a paragraph and also have the proper grammar in terms of at the sentence level. So identifying the purpose of what you are writing, providing evidence to support your statements, and then also that appropriate format, things like APA format, which is critically important in your writing. We'll be doing narrative writing and also a more an essay where you're going to be defending a point and providing research and evidence for that too. So you'll be writing in multiple formats and also reading to learn about different things that can help support you in the work that you are doing. So next, just talk about being prepared for class. Really the critical thing to be prepared in class is please bring a charged computer with you each and every time. I will have a few handouts printed here and there, but for the most part, all the resources are stored in the computer. If you're able to log on to the class and have your documents and things that you are working on, I'll be typically doing a presentation like this and giving some opportunities for interactive activities with partners and groups. But for you to be prepared, you just need to have a computer that's charged and ready to go, and we'll have internet access within our classroom. So in terms of your assignments, the syllabus and the course outline is kind of week by week, and I'll go over that next of things that you're working on, but it really outlines all the critical things that you need to know. Now, late assignments, this is the one thing that's important. Although attendance is not something that is graded, there are very strict policies in terms of the assignments that you need to complete and when they need to be turned in. So first of all, if you have a full assignment, let's say it's your draft of your personal narrative, it's 10% off for each late week that you turn that in. The other thing that's a bit challenging beyond just your overall assignments are the discussion boards. For example, this week we have 2 discussion board posts that are due on Wednesday, and then you need to have 3 completed by Sunday. 2 of them are responses and then 1 additional one. So those 5 responses are all work into your participation grade. That's critically important. Because it's dependent upon you responding to your classmates, discussion boards that are posted after the week you will not get any credit for in terms of participation. So that's the one thing that you really want to monitor, that you're following along in the discussions, responding and posting in the midst of all the things you need to complete in this class, in addition to obviously your lives. So we'll talk more about that, but it's really focusing on making sure you get your assignments in on time so I can give you that full credit and you can be successful in the course. So in terms of grading, it's pretty simple. As you can see, I really like the structure where it's 90 to 100% is an A, 80 to 89% is a B. There's no A minuses, B pluses, and things like that. So it's very clear and straightforward, and it gives you that ability to achieve a grade and not trying to be going from that, that 86% to get to the 89% for a B to a B plus. It's an overall very simple graded structure. Now the course requirements, as you can see here, are assignments, and I'll go into them what they're due each week. We have the personal narrative at the beginning and end. That's a big portion of your grade. You also have to complete an annotated bibliography that supports your research essay. Then you'll have 2 quizzes about academic integrity and the APA formatting. And that 20% of participation that really ties to that discussion board work. That's the attendance of the work that you do. So those all make a considerable portion of your grade. So I really encourage you to make sure you complete each of those on time so you can get that full credit. Now, in terms of the syllabus overall, I just want to review with you the big assignments that are due each week. So for the first week, we have the personal narrative you'll be working on. You're going to talk about an event in your life and that really affected you, and we'll talk about the components of that that are critical. So do that draft this week. Week 2, we're going to begin preparing for a research essay where you're going to figure out what your topic is, and you need to find 4 sources for that, different works that provide additional information to support your point. Then week 3, you have an academic integrity quiz, that multiple choice quiz about making sure that you're avoiding things like plagiarism and being improperly citing material. Then week 4, you do an annotated bibliography, expanding upon those sources from week 2. We're going to talk about the specific correct format to cite all of your resources for the research essay. Then week 5, research essay, that first one you're going to turn into me. You're going to defend that thesis statement and respond to the questions that you developed. What's really great about this course is that we revisit these assignments. So week 6, we'll have that APA quiz, more focused on that formatting and the proper formatting of your entire essay, how to write. Almost all the assignments you will do in education. For me, all of my graduate work, I'd say over 12 years, APA was always the requirement in terms of the way that things should be formatted. But then week 7, that research essay based on the feedback you received, you're going to revise that and resubmit. And the personal narrative, revising that and resubmitting too. What's great about this course is that truly great writing is not something that's done quickly and just submitted. It's revised, it's edited, it's improved, working towards that final quality product. And that's what this course rewards you for and gives you credit for when you do your work. Next, I just want to touch base briefly some important policies and procedures. First of all, our policy in front of action, equal opportunity and sexual harassment. Just things to be aware of, that we want a safe, respectful classroom at all times where everyone feels truly able to be successful within the classroom and recognize the unique person that they are. So refer to that, and please bring to my attention any issues that you may identify in the classroom related to that. In terms of students with disabilities, if you have any accommodation that you need in any way, please contact me immediately so I can reach out to the Office of Accessibility Services and put that into place for you in the classroom. It is my requirement, and it's something I eagerly want to do for you to be successful, to have all that set up for my students. So please make sure you communicate that to me if you have accommodations that are needed. And then finally, the academic dishonesty and plagiarism, just to make sure that you are aware that we need to, especially in writing, be citing things properly. You want to be including lots of different research within your work, but it's your own authentic work. And academic and dishonesty in terms of cheating or taking some other person's information, calling it your own, will not be accepted. And in general, just especially in 2017, I want students to be aware there's many different programs that can automatically identify, like Turnitin that is listed there, if something is taken from another source and not credited. So it's something nowadays I just encourage you to always be honest and make sure that you cite. And if you have questions, email me, contact me anytime. I'm here to support. So just the first thing to talk about, and this is what we will be doing within our first class. Whoops, there we go. There we go. So within our first class, one thing we're going to be doing is talking about our experience and our goals as students, and how that helps us to be successful in the classroom. So for our first assignment here, what we need to do is on the discussion board, there's some questions you'll be responding to within the hybrid course. First of all, what are some of your aspirations or goals? What are you working towards within this class? And how will those goals help you to be successful? For example, for myself, when I initially went into my graduate education at the University of Virginia, for me, my goals were to work in education, to work with students, to work with administrators, and I recognized the need to be able to properly communicate with parents, with administrators, with other teachers, for them to be able to understand the focus and goal of what we're working on. So these classes help me to be able to properly cite things and research things to be successful in those areas. Also, in terms of prior experiences, think about maybe courses you've taken before, other things that kind of help inform you on how to properly approach this class. It could even be something in terms of the hybrid format and being able to work and being able to schedule. What experiences do you have in your life that can help you to be successful? So for example, for me, like teaching this class, my experience taking online classes before is helping me to identify how to plan things accordingly to be successful over a long-term schedule. And in your research project, just be thinking about some of the possible topics within your field of study and society that may interest you. So for someone like me in education, things that could be discussed is possibly maybe like the difference between charter schools and public education, the advantages and disadvantages, different forms of funding, things like standardized testing, the importance of the No Child Left Behind legislation, how that impacted instruction in the classroom, but also possibly the constraints of that and the way the teachers want to reach their students. So topics like that kind of connect with my field of study that I could research and also be interesting for the audience. So next, our weekly reading. I'm going to talk a little bit here. Now, our weekly reading, and I was going to talk about this a bit more in depth with you in class. It's titled The Driver's Seat. This is required reading through UMUC that you'll be using for a discussion board response, so you must be read. But things I wanted to clarify with this. First of all, do not compare your personal narrative to this written format. First of all, just in terms of length, this writing is 5,799 words. Your writing assignment is 800 to 1,200 words, so it's literally almost like 1/6 the size compared to what you're going to be completing. In addition, this form of personal narrative is based on the New Yorker, which I read things from occasionally, but the New Yorker is very dense, a very specific audience that they are writing to. It's not towards the general public. It kind of assumes certain background knowledge of the reader, often like a metropolitan livelihood, as this writer here talks about his experience of growing up in New York City and not ever getting his driver's license, and so having to get his driver's license when he's older. That's something, for example, for me, I cannot relate to. But only someone possibly who lived in a city who could just live off public transportation would be able to experience. But just in general, I would encourage you to not take too much from this in comparison to your own writing. What you want to do is to have an experience from your life that can be relatable to the audience and they can make that connection with. So what I'm going to do is I have posted on the hybrid site an example from a class that I took through George Mason years ago, where we had to do a lot of our own personal writing. And one student, Vanessa Chang, wrote this excellent work about the relationship she had with her younger sister who was born and how she became closer with her as she got older. It's much briefer, simple and straightforward, but very meaningful and purposeful, and I could personally relate to that much more than this driver's seat article. But regardless, it's still important for you to read this article so that you can respond to the research questions. But I just wanted to comment any concerns you may have had if you read this and had any difficulty relating to it. So in terms of the discussion board responses with this question, the author discusses the factors that led him to learn to drive, which motivated him. So he talked about how he wanted to be able to drive to, in some ways, kind of impress his son, and the importance of being able to take his family to the beach and things like that. So what they asked you to do is to come up with something maybe you didn't learn at the same time as your peers. So for example, for me, cooking is not something I'm particularly skilled at. But and mostly because I have a gluten allergy, so I grew up with a very simple diet, and I'm a kind of a no-frills guy. I can pretty much eat a bowl of cereal and microwave food on a daily basis, and that's all that I need. But for my wife, on our anniversary one year, I wanted to cook her a nice dinner. So that was my motivation, it was to cook crab cakes for her. So in order to do that, I had to learn a lot of the basics of just how to use the oven and things like that, and actually call other friends to give me tips so I could still be able to respond to her and surprise her. So that would be something for me I could write more about, the process of learning how to cook for this special situation, because I lack those skills from before. And so I guess my experience would be similar to the author Gopnik in terms of I had motivation based on a family member to learn something or to do something, not something I felt the need to do. I was quite content eating a bowl of cereal or microwaving something to eat, but I had that purpose, and for myself, I wanted to learn it to be able to accomplish that goal. So think of that as you're responding to your discussion board work this week. So the next question is talking about the connection between passing tests. So for this author, his advice from his son is that passing tests has little to do with the actual task he was completing, and that came to haunt his entire experience of learning to drive. So when he says his experience was haunted, he was able to be successful. He was able to complete that test and pass with flying colors. It was multiple choice, as the son referred to, but then his driving instructor pointed out that driving is not multiple choice. It's something where you have to respond in the moment in order to impress your evaluator. So be thinking about your experience with writing with that. Did you have any experiences may have influenced the way that you addressed writing from your childhood? For example, for me, I think back to when I was in 4th grade. I always remember there's another student in my class who wrote this, and this is 4th grade, he wrote this 20-page story, and it was only like a sentence or two per page. But I always remember being incredibly intimidated by the length of his story in comparison to mine, and in some ways discouraged me from writing because I couldn't compare to the work that he had done, even though it was very simple what he had worked on. Also, I remember my father encouraging me and requiring me to read books like Tom Sawyer and War of the Worlds and Huckleberry Finn, and these great books by Mark Twain that were written at a much higher level. So when it came to my writing, then I always compared myself to that. But then as I gained more experience and I recognized my specific area of study when I worked on and became knowledgeable in that area, I gained more confidence. So that's something I hope will achieve for all of you in this class too. So our focus this week in terms of our grammar lab is called sentence fragments and run-on. So if you go into the course, there's certain activities you need to complete for this. Completing these activities, you're not graded based on your response to these questions, but you need to complete this and then respond the discussion board to the grammar lab questions in order to achieve credit. So I want to go over a few things in terms of fragments and run-ons, just a brief presentation I had to kind of give you some important tips and points. So first of all, understanding run-ons. Basic things to remember: a sentence, it's got a subject and a verb and expresses a complete thought. All that needs to be included within your sentence in order for it to be complete. A fragment is when you have a group of words that's missing one of those components. Maybe it's missing the subject, a verb, it's lacking that complete thought. It's an incomplete sentence. They're one of the most basic flaws that you see in a lot of writing. So basic things to consider, some trouble students have is that a word group that starts with a preposition. So if you say things like, it's hard to find time to study with all of my other work. When you say with all of my other work, that preposition needs something to complete it. It needs to be connected to something else. So that's kind of thing to recognize when you have these fragments. If you just say them separately, you can just almost sense something is missing. It's that you recognize something else needs to follow to complete that thought, that idea. A word group that starts with a dependent word, notice this: because we left early. Because we left early, you need to have something that comes before, after, depending on the way that you structure the sentence, but just because we left early is not that complete sentence thought. In addition, more trouble spots if you include ing. So for example, I was running fast as I could, hoping to get there in time. Just when you say hoping to get there in time, you need something that follows or precedes that in order to have the complete sentence. Or two, that also recognize something that comes with it. Cherry got underneath the car to change your oil. If you just say to change your oil, that's not a complete sentence. To change your oil, why? What else is occurring within that sentence? So in general, when you have a word group that has a beginning of an explanation or something is mentioned in a previous sentence, if you have like such as English, history, and math, that's not, it's giving examples of something, but you need that concept that connects to that of what you're leading with, following with that example. I enjoyed watching scary movies. For example, Dawn of the Dead and Friday the 13th movies. You can't just say, for example. What is an example of? That completes that thought, that completes that idea. Now, ways you can correct that. So if you add that, what is missing, that subject verb to complete thought. For example, Dawn of the Dead and Friday the 13th movies are some of my favorites. That completes that thought. Or we attach that fragment sentence to the beginning or the end. We got home early because we left early. So notice those connected together. I'm taking several classes this semester, such as English, history, and math. Connecting those sentences together. Now, run-on is when you have two sentences that kind of continue on, and there's lacking that the independent clauses are they're not correctly connected. You need some type of punctuation to bring them together. So two types are that fuse a run-on sentence or a splice. So a fuse sentence, these can just sound strange. They're just kind of pushed together. Exercising is important. It can keep your weight down. You need to have something that kind of connects those together. I picked up my laundry, then I went home. She had a sore throat. She was running a fever. There's two separate sentences in themselves. They're just fused to kind of join together. Comma splice is created when you have two complete sentences that are joined together only by a comma. You need an additional word. She started feeling bad on on Monday. By Wednesday, she was running a fever. I picked up my laundry, then I went home. You need to have more. His job paid well. However, he couldn't make ends meet. So ways you can correct that is adding a period, kind of splitting those sentences, adding a semicolon, which connects to sentences that have a similar thread to them. They're connected, but they still should be separate sentences, so a semicolon completes that. Or adding a comma or coordinating conjunction, which I will share some of those, or a dependent So when you add a period, I picked up my laundry, period, and then I went home. So you separate these two sentences. Very simple. So there's other examples there if you want to read those. Next, add a semicolon. So two independent clauses that are connected. I picked up my laundry, then I went home. So that semicolon shows that the ideas are connected, but they still are separate sentences. Remember, you must follow these guidelines with them. There must be a complete sentence on either side of the semicolon, and they must be closely related. So back up top, his job paid well, however, he's still going to make ends meet. They're two separate sentences, but there's a connect idea between. Or if you add a comma or coordinating conjunction. So use a comma or coordinating conjunction between independent clauses. So you just put that comma and then an additional word. I picked up my laundry and then I went home. She had a sore throat and was running a fever. Or a dependent word. So for a dependent word is when you have one like because or while that is purposeful, and when you have that dependent word, that kind of that coordinating conjunction, it brings that sentence together. So another document I had printed for you, but I'm not able to pass out tonight, but I'll have linked on the website and I'll pass on next week, is on the slide. This lists common subordinating conjunctions, coordinating conjunctions, and correlative conjunctions. Subordinating conjunctions are kind of two sentences that come together and they cannot stand alone. They're dependent upon one another. So after I went to this, I did that. As if, as long as this, then that. Since, so that, though, without. All of those subordinating conjunctions put one part of the sentence dependent upon the other. Those two dependent. That dependent clause with that independent clause. Coordinating conjunctions just kind of combine things together. And, but, or, fo, yet, so, or, nor. Those are very common, but they, and if it's two similar things, but if it's something in contrasting to the initial sentence. And then the correlative conjunctions, if you say like both, you'll need and, neither, nor, not only, but also. When you include one of them, you need to include the other in order to have that complete sentence, that complete idea. So once again, for the Grammar Lab this week, you will do the first part of the discussion board where you're going to take a sentence from your work, from your personal narrative this week, and then you're going to post that, and then using that, you'll respond the next week to another student to give them feedback. So you're going to find a piece of work that you've corrected from your work, get feedback, and then respond to somebody else next week. This is a 2-week assignment for the Grammar Lab. So next, I want to talk a little bit about the personal narrative draft that you're going to be working on. First of all, in general, just the length. The length is 800 to 1,000 words. So that is not very long. It's a single page. So don't be stressed about having to write this whole assignment. I consider it stressful to have a writing assignment due in the first week. Just reading that would stress me out. So I want you to realize that it's a shorter work. Focus on just making sure that you complete it, and I'll talk about on the rubric that each sentence and each paragraph is well written and corrected. Important things to include, important paragraphs. Well, you want to have at least an introductory paragraph, a body paragraph or a few, and then a conclusion. Your introductory paragraph is going to have that thesis statement we'll talk about next. And then after that, the body kind of supports the idea in the thesis statement, and the conclusion will tie back in and connect with that initial paragraph and the thesis statement once again, kind of wrapping up your overall focus. You need to have a thesis statement. It's kind of the thread that connects together your whole paper. There's a video on the next slide that I want you to watch that really shows writing an effective thesis statement. But the key thing is it's kind of for a thesis statement, especially about a personal narrative, something about that personal experience that is important to you, and then leads to it's important because like a few ideas that connect with those body paragraphs that kind of show why something's critical, why something is important. The point of view, you want to be saying I throughout, but don't say you. Your point of view doesn't want to be talking directly to the audience, but you are doing a first-person narrative, so you can use I throughout. And the final thing is APA formatting. We're not doing a full and complete APA formatting. What you'll be expected to do, and this is listed in the assignment instructions, is 1-inch margins, double spaced. Make sure you're using, I would say 12-point font. It says you can do 10-point to 12-point, but 12-point is the standard throughout for all assignments and work that you do. So I encourage you just to go with that in Times New Roman. And include a title page with the title of your paper. In that title page, there's examples listed on the side. Should be centered. Have your name, the title of the paper, and the class, and the name of your school. And then at the end, if you have any references, have that reference page at the end showing the different things that you cite overall. So this is that thesis statement paper that I mentioned. It's very brief, but it really provides critical information for you to be able to develop one and what you need to kind of outline your entire paper. So please watch this. Now I just want to go over briefly the rubric for the personal narrative. So this is the rubric for the first submission. The submission at the end of the course for this personal narrative is more detailed, includes more components. So recognize this is the basic aspects you need to include, but things you want to think about and make sure you're focusing on. I'm not going to be grading incredibly critically, I guess you could say, for this first week, but you need to include these things at a quality level. So have that introductory paragraph that sets out what you're discussing. Make sure you include that thesis statement. Consider that video that I posted to help support you with that. That kind of is that thread that ties together your whole paper. And that concluding paragraph that wraps up everything and connects back to that thesis statement in the end. Paragraph by paragraph, what they mean by unity is that your paragraphs have a purpose. It's kind of have that key idea, the supporting concepts throughout, typically 3 to 5 sentences. And the support of that idea is what's included in that paragraph. It's kind of a key theme, a key idea of that paragraph. And it's coherent, it stays on topic. It's not kind of jumping around with many different kind of scattered ideas. Then at the grammar level, that sentence by sentence level, your basic punctuation, we'd say with that, capital letters, avoiding the run-ons, the fragments that we had talked about, making sure you have proper spelling throughout and the proper word usage, and that overall your sentences are complete, question marks, all those different types of punctuation. That should be appropriate. And I will provide you feedback on your work as you submit it too. And the assignment guidelines, you have an appropriate topic. It matches that personal narrative that is outlined in the instructions. And then the formatting, as we talked about the APA, those few requirements on the assignment is the formatting that you should include in your paper. So just make sure you follow those basics. And if you do each of those things within your paper, you will get an excellent grade and do well. So to wrap up here, I'd just like to leave you with a very brief quote. Words are a lens to focus one's mind. I truly love this quote because the way that I think through things is by writing, by responding to a message, even just like taking notes on something, by communicating, just putting words on paper or typing them obviously nowadays. It really helps you to focus what my thoughts are. So I encourage you to use this. Don't consider running just a task you need to complete, but a way to focus and have a clear structure of your thoughts in your mind of that narrative, of that, obviously that essay you're going to write later, and that's the advantage to write it. Help you be more focused and have a clearer understanding of what you believe and what you want to communicate by using writing as that avenue.